Sidebar is the official podcast of the Napa County District Attorney's Office. Hello, everyone. This is Carlos Villatoro with the Sidebar Podcast. A very happy new year to you. It's 2025, and this is the first podcast of the new year. And so for this year, we're going to kick it off with a guest that we've never had before. Her name is Michelle Roberts. Michelle is one of our seasoned attorneys here. There's so many new ones that we have, huh?
Yes, true.
And Michelle has been here for quite a while. So this month, Michelle approached me because this month is known as Stalking Awareness Month. It's a month that not everybody knows about, and I didn't even know about it. And so I'm glad that Michelle came to me and approached with this idea of coming on the podcast and talking a little bit about the mechanics of stalking, you know. And it's funny because I watch Netflix, right? I mean, you guys watch Netflix too. You watch Netflix too. Yep. And on Netflix, there are a bunch of shows that have to do with stalking. There's one called You, in which there's this guy who gets infatuated with this girl, and he uses all forms of electronic social media and this and that to try to, you know, woo this girl, and even uses it to like take out her other people in her life too. And I was just, wow, that's so sinister. You know, it's like one of these crimes that it's, you know, it gets more attention now because I guess it's easier now than ever to do. But Michelle, I think I want to start off. Tell us a little bit about what you do here for the Napa County DA's office.
Yes, so I'm on the family violence team. Right now, we are handling all domestic violence cases, child abuse cases, and sexual assault cases. We're in a team of 3 right now, and so I'm one of those, and focus primarily on domestic violence and family violence currently.
And it's been such a busy morning for Michelle. This morning, she was over at a sentencing. A very, very crazy case. Serial rapist Santiago Torres Mendez was sentenced to life without parole, and we were there, and then she just met with one of the victims. You know, that's also our DAs make time to meet with victims in cases and answer their questions and talk to them about the case. It's our effort to kind of bring them into the process easily and give them a better understanding of how the criminal justice system works in Napa. So thank you for making the time.
Of course.
Today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So stalking. You know, I think of stalking and I think of like somebody looking up somebody on Facebook and just looking at their photos. And but there's actually, you know, a definition. There's actually something that is in the criminal code.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what stalking is.
Yeah. So, you know, you touched on it a little bit. Media, movies, TV shows, they kind of create this sort of idea of what stalking is, which is the, you know, person creeping behind, peeping through windows, you know, things like that, following you in your car, that kind of thing. And it doesn't always meet exactly the legal definition of stalking.
Right. And that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because, you know, is it enough to like look up a photo on Facebook? Am I stalking someone when I do that? Or are they stalking me? I don't know.
Yeah. So the legal definition of stalking is the repeated following and harassing of another person with a credible threat and with the intent to put that person in reasonable fear for their safety. And, you know, stalking really can affect people from all walks of life. Anyone can be a victim of stalking, really. I think recent statistics show that 1 in 3 women will be stalked in their lifetime, which is terrifying, right? Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And 1 in 6 men will be stalked in their lifetime, will experience
by
that.
Somebody who wants to get to know them, I guess.
Yeah. And so it really is a crime that, you know, seems a little sensationalized in the media, but ultimately can affect people. And stalking can be charged as either a felony or a misdemeanor. And it's known as a wobbler, so it's at the discretion of the DA. And, you know, for someone who is punished for stalking, it can be anything from, probation and anger management classes, and maybe, if drugs and alcohol are at the heart of their issues, then that can be part of a resolution, all the way up until 3 years in the state prison. And then, if it's a stalking offense that includes a violation of a restraining order conviction or that kind of thing, some other conviction in their past history, that can be up to 5 years.
Or even a new crime, like stalking someone and then robbing them or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It can be part of a greater crimes, scheme.
Yeah. So is all stalking the same though? Like, are there what? I guess the question is like, what are the different types?
Yeah. So we see, I see it as two categories of stalkers that we see. There's kind of like what I would categorize as the stranger stalker. And then there's something that's more like the intimate partner stalker.
Oh, yeah. Like a husband, wife, ex-girlfriend, that kind of deal.
Yeah. And we see both of those types of things. In the more stranger stalker category, that might just be someone who, like we see on TV, someone who becomes fixated or obsessed with someone and then ends up stalking them, and they're completely unknown to the victim. The victim may not even know that they're being stalked, at first. And then there's also kind of in that category is maybe like acquaintances, neighbors,
friends of
coworkers,
friends, that kind of deal.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So that's what I kind of think of in that category. In this other category of intimate partner stalking, and that's really part of the greater category of crimes like family violence and things like that. That's for people that have prior relationships, whether it be engagement relationships, maybe they were married for a period of time, dating relationships, and they then, after that relationship ends, they are still fixated, still obsessed with their previous partner, that they then end up stalking them.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And that's kind of the one, when I think of stalking, I think of maybe a little old school a picture, but of a guy in a mask with a black shirt and a black hat, just hiding behind bushes, just watching people. But that's not necessarily the case. It could be anyone, and it could look like anyone. It's amazing how it it's defined and everything. And so what are some signs to look out for? I mean, I'm sure at one time or another, somebody gets curious about somebody and starts looking up photos, and that person might not even know. Like, so how do I know if I'm being stalked? Like, what are some signs?
I mean, I think the biggest sign sort of at the outset is beginning to be fearful in one's life, right? Maybe looking over your shoulder, changing your own behavior because of someone else's behavior, right? And a person who's in an intimate partner stalking situation might not recognize that as the beginning stages of stalking. They might just think of it as like a crazy ex, or, just not over the relationship, that kind of thing.
Like a changing of your number or something like that. Right. Or maybe even like taking a different way to work.
Yep. Installing surveillance cameras. I mean, all of those kind of things. Yeah, you might take a certain path to work, but now because of someone else's behavior, taking a a different path and that kind of thing. The obvious signs would be someone physically following you, someone showing up uninvited at your house or your job or your workplace or something like that. Clearly obsessive behavior like that.
So we're not talking about coincidental behavior.
Right.
We're talking about patterns here.
Yes.
Right.
And kind of some less common, signs that you might see is, repeated phone calls, repeated social media contact that's unreturned, obviously. Repeated restraining order violations, all of those kind of things. And one common thing that I think a lot of the general public might not know is that stalking does not require an explicit threat. It can be implied through a pattern of conduct that's designed to put someone in fear. So there could be a victim of stalking who doesn't even know that they're being stalked because no one is making an actual threat to them. But it's kind of the pattern of behavior that is putting that person in reasonable fear.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So we work with a lot of people here in this office, and what legal protections do victims have if they are targeted by someone stalking them?
Yeah, so there are a lot. There are many different avenues that someone can pursue or have someone pursue on their behalf. The first would be, if someone believes that they're being stalked or believes that they are in fear, to contact law enforcement, to make a police report, to document that information, no matter how trivial it might seem, to document it. And if a police officer believes that a crime has been committed, they can apply for an emergency protective order. That's basically a restraining order that can include many terms like no contact directly, no contact through third parties, stay away orders from the person's home, stay away orders from the job, specific addresses, things like that. And that can be good for 7 days. Now, if it is a criminal case, it would be sent over to the DA's office for review. If a criminal case is filed, the DA assigned to a case would consider putting a criminal protective order in place to ask the judge to have a criminal protective order signed.
And that would be longer than the 7 days.
It would. That would stay in place from the arraignment date through the conclusion of the case. The criminal protective order can include many of the same things: specific address stayaways, stay away from person, car, home, job, all of that kind of thing. No contact orders, both through directly or through a third party. It has firearm restrictions as well when there's a criminal protective order in place. And so that can be through the entirety of the criminal case, and then if and when the case either resolves by verdict or guilty plea, then a criminal protective order can be put in place for up to 10 years after that.
Wow. Yeah.
And even if a criminal case is not filed, so there's no criminal protective order, the victim could still seek a civil restraining order, which can have many of those same terms: no contact, stay away orders, all of that kind of thing, firearm restrictions. And those are kind of the best things that can be put in place for safety planning for a victim.
Yeah. It seems like with the rise of, apps and social media, especially cell phones and stuff like that, and everybody has access to everybody's life via the digital landscape and stuff. And so it seems like it's easier than ever to stalk someone, right? Is there anything that, our audience can do to kind of curb that behavior, kind of protect themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there's somebody whose behavior is becoming, obsessive or that kind of thing, then utilizing the protections available through technology, maybe blocking the contact, deleting a phone number, blocking the number, changing, social media names if it gets to be, that extreme, that kind of thing. Yeah. And just kind of limiting the information that is publicly available, I think can always be a little bit of a protection that one can put in place.
And I'm smiling because I know on my own personal social media is very much locked down. It's very much private. And, we do that by virtue of the positions that we hold. Obviously, it's best for us not to have our personal information out there. But I'll go on people's Facebook sometimes and I'll see like their cell numbers and their addresses, their birthdays, all of this personal information that somebody can use to essentially stalk them. And so I think that, would you agree that the less you put on social media, the better in terms of stalking?
Yeah, I think from a personal aspect, I think that is, there's just a very wide breadth of information available online, and so limiting that is obviously a safety precaution that anyone might be smart to take.
So I've been stalked. Somebody's been stalking me. They've been showing up at my work. They've been texting, calling, hitting me up on Facebook. What do you look for in documentation wise? How do I best document the stalking for the purpose of a criminal action against them, or even like a police report?
Yeah, so I think documentation is just really key. You know, the police officer who's taking your report likely has no prior information about either the relationship or how this began, all of that kind of thing. So just making sure that as much can be documented as possible. That might include collecting text messages, phone call logs, surveillance video footage, ring camera footage. If there's a lot of different incidents kind of occurring over a period of time, maybe documenting on a timeline might be helpful, just to recollect photos, letters, all of those kinds of things can be helpful. The more information the person is able to provide, the better it is to be able to have a full understanding.
What if somebody, though, gets so upset that they receive a text message and it upsets them so much that they delete it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a defense mechanism that is a completely understandable human interaction, But I think it's to the best extent possible, saving those interactions can be helpful so that
it's a best practice for documentation.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So aside from watching Netflix and learning about stalkers and these cases that we work, what can we as a society, as a community do to kind of help people who are being stalked, or even just to curb it? I mean, are there any groups or organizations out there that you can think of that assist?
Yes. We have our local news agency that can be very helpful to people who are being stalked, either in sort of the stranger category or the intimate partner category. And they have many resources that they can help with. They can help with filling out the paperwork necessary for a civil restraining order. They can help kind of guide through the criminal process as well. If there's a criminal case attached, they can work with our office and to provide, seamless communication to the victim and the person going through the process. They can help with financial aid for safety planning measures, which can be a really important thing for someone who is a victim of stalking. Many things like that. They're a wonderful resource and can help with, services for someone who's going through something like this, because obviously this type of crime can have very long-lasting repercussions on someone's, physical well-being, mental well-being, mental health. It's obviously something that can take away a person's security in feeling safe in their own home and in where they are. And so they can be a very valuable resource to help kind of get that survivor back on track and help them move on with their life.
And that's kind of why we're doing this podcast, is to make everybody aware that stalking is a real issue. It's not just entertainment fodder. But, this being Stalking Awareness Month, I want to get it from Michelle here. Why is it important to know about stalking in this day and age?
Well, I think just how widespread it really is, and also just the great span of people that it affects, and the wide breadth of relationships that it affects. So like we talked about, both the stranger acquaintance type stalker, but also the intimate violence type stalker. Those kind of situations can be incredibly dangerous because of that person's previous access to maybe that person's personal information.
Absolutely.
An intimate partner who turns stalker can have access to someone's social security number, their information like that, their whereabouts, their frequent places that they go, all of that kind of thing.
Who they interact with, their friends and family.
Yes, all that. Which can really, unfortunately, be weaponized and used against against the victim. And so I think it's really important to recognize what stalking is, how it's a little bit, a lot wider than what we maybe as a society think because of, the media and TV and that kind of thing, and sort of understand what it is so that maybe someone can recognize if they are enduring something that might be stalking, and so that, no one has to live in fear.
Absolutely. So I think those were all my questions for you. Thank you for coming onto the podcast. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And if you want to continue the conversation, you can do so on our social media channels. We have a Facebook, an Instagram, and a Twitter. And throughout this month, which is Stalking Awareness Month, we will be posting information regarding stalking, some things that we talked about as well. And you can just follow us on our social media channels. That's Napa County DA, pretty much everywhere. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time on the Sidebar Podcast.